Welcome back. Let's go in and explore the C of credibility and how it impacts you and your team. Well, hello and welcome back. I'm John Murray III, and I'm here to talk to you about the 7 C's of leadership. And this week, we're still on credibility, but we're going to move on to the credibility of your team. And your team is credible in what they deliver on. Sometimes those individuals can have credibility in areas that you don't have. So make sure that you're relying on that, but also supporting that as a leader. Now, I gave you the example last week of credibility that I had to earn when I went into the automotive industry. This week, I want to talk about the credibility that I inherited and had to live up to when I started at the Disney MGM Studios. When I was in costuming, one thing for me is that, again, since I wanted something different than the background would indicate, which, again, my background, I had a degree in psychology, I had a degree in English education, and I worked as a manager in fast food and retail and a handful of other places. That didn't bring me the credibility when they put me into a costuming role. I had nothing in my background, nothing that would say I knew what a gusset was or how to hem a pair of pants. Now, you would say, well, it's very difficult to hem a pair of pants. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. In fact, it's gotten easier with some of the tape and everything else, but you still should hem it right because otherwise it'll just fall apart. Now, when I joined the costuming team at the Disney MGM Studios in Orlando, Florida, that's right, it was the Disney MGM Studios at the time. It was not the Disney Studios. It was not the Disney Hollywood Studios. It was Disney MGM. They partnered together because, again, they each had assets and credibility in other places as organizations. So, when they named the park and when they needed the expansive amount, they had to put that in there to bring credibility to the movie segment because Disney was known for animated movies and some live action, but they weren't known for some of the other live action. They needed that breadth and scope. So when I joined them in the before this last century started, what I had to do was actually learn a little bit about costuming. And with my semi-photographic memory, which I haven't talked about yet, because it works in sometimes and it doesn't work other times. So with this semi-photographic memory, they would tell me where all the costumes were across each of the lines. And I had to know where each of them were so I can run and get them so that people can get out on stage and perform in front of guests. Now, perform really is they may have been a merchandising host or hostess. They may have actually been on stage at a show, but they had to have their costume, and that costume was very important. Now, I also had to understand how to make sure that the costume looked good. It wasn't faded. It didn't have frills or torn apart on the legs, but it was my job as somebody that worked in costuming to make sure that they had the best experience so that they can provide a good experience to the guest. Now, since I worked in retail, the great thing is that I already had that mindset of that sense of service to help extend that beyond the costuming area into the park. I moved very quickly through the costuming team. Once I understood what needed to be done and I understood the types of costumes that we had, I also was able to start training others on how to use that. And it was training on where the costumes were, how to do a quick change, what we needed to do, and why the shoes had to be the same color every show, every day, every month, all the time. And so as I started training and I started building communications around all of these things, I had to rely on others on my team because they brought the credibility of costuming. They had years of experience. In fact, some of them, since the studios was actually the third park that opened in Florida, some of the individuals on the team actually opened the Magic Kingdom, opened the Epcot, and then moved to the studios. And they brought credibility and understanding what that gusset was, what the hem was, how do we get from here to here, what does a good costume look like, and when do we need to order new ones. And so they imparted their knowledge on me, and I had to rely on them. And so when we had to go to leaders and we had to share why we needed to change certain things or needed to make sure that the custodial staff needed to wear the blue socks that they were requested, I also brought the individuals on my team along, especially as I moved into leadership. Why? Because that demonstrated the stories that they can tell. Remember last week when we talked about telling stories and what that does to an organization? Those team members were able to tell stories about why it's important and the theming is important in certain areas. That theming helped us get to this credibility as an organization of delivering on excellent storytelling and delivering on excellence in park experiences. We couldn't do that if one thing was out of place. And that team helped me to ensure that I had the stories. So once I understood the stories, then they were able to do the rest of the job easier, because then I got to reinforce with our partners and other people in the park that this is the story we wanted to tell, not just, hey, here's your costume, thanks, have a good day. So that credibility of the team was very important. We had experts in sewing. We had experts in costume design. We had experts in so many things. But all I had to do was be a good leader. And a good leader realizes that there's credibility beyond you as an individual, but extends to your team. So include those individuals on your team, and don't just let them sit and think that you're off doing the other stuff, but showcase them and make sure that they're a part of the leadership discussions and not just thinking that they're just part of the checklist that goes along with what needs to be done. The other piece there is show the measurements not only to your leaders, but to the individuals on your team. And the measurements that are being done that impact your brand, those questions on the measurements should align to the credibility of the team. When I was in costuming, we talked about how quickly and how well we can deliver your costumes to you, and if we had them in stock. So if you were a size 36, but we only had a size 34 or 38, hey, guess what? You're going to be uncomfortable for most of the day because it's either too big or too small. So we had to take measurements on what we were trying to be credible in. We asked about costume size. We asked, did we have your size? Did we have it into you in a timely manner? Were you able to get to your location because you had a good experience in costuming? Were we friendly? Part of that, why we were friendly, again, is because those individuals had to go out into the parks and deliver on excellence from a service perspective, because that's, again, what the organization had as part of their brand. So ask yourself, what does your team do well? And do you bring those individuals to meetings? When I moved into measurement and I had a team of analysts, I made sure that I was bringing those analysts with me because they were more familiar with the data than I was. So when we had a leadership meeting, I would always prep them. So we'd sit there and practice before we brought individuals into meetings, but also made sure that they brought the credibility of the data with them, and so that they were prepared. And then I would help them get through the other questions that the leaders were asking to connect the dots. I did that a couple times, and then let the analysts take over from some of those meetings. They got the pattern, they got the credibility. Again, my credibility as a leader extended to them at that point, but they picked it up from there. All the analysts I worked with understood that these were opportunities that they had to build their own credibility, but also to have the credibility of the team grow in that particular data set. So whether we were talking about HR data or guest data, it was always data that was important to somebody in the organization, and that helped grow that credibility for the team. How do you grow that credibility for your team? Where do they tell you needs to be measured? How do you share those measurements with them? And then how do they help with the measurement and delivery on change as a result of the measurement? Next piece I always talk about is connecting. And talk with your partners and on your team's credibility. How well do you deliver on that data? How well did we deliver on the costumes? How well did you do with sustaining that sense of service or delivery? Because your partners will be a good source for you, but your partners will also help you change, especially those partners that are more mentors for you. Where does your team think that their credibility needs to grow, change, or adapt? Those are questions that you should ask, not just at year end, but a couple times throughout the year. Ask that as a whole team. Sometimes your teams won't give you answers in a team meeting. Sometimes they'll give you answers in a closed door or a closed door meeting or just individually because they feel more comfortable. It doesn't impact the credibility other than, hey, here's where we can move forward, but it gives you ideas on how you can adjust so that other teams start to understand and tell the stories of how your team delivered on the excellence that you're trying to portray. The last thing I'll ask is how do you reinforce the essence of that credibility? How do you help your team understand that they are believable, is that they should deliver on the stuff without doing the "I told you so" or "because I'm the leader"? That's not the answer. The answer has to lie in how they want to deliver. If they're not in it to deliver the excellence, it's going to be tough for you to reinforce that. And that credibility, as far as your team delivering on it, kind of goes down with that. And your focus should be on pulling them out, but also sustaining and maintaining so that they don't slide back down. It's moving up, not moving down. The last thing I'll share with you is that as you expand your credibility, please realize that that can also lead to more work. Now, for those of you saying, yes, I know that, I've seen that, it's true. And as you expand your breadth and your knowledge and all of your team's breadth and knowledge, your team will then take on more. I've had some experiences, especially recently, to where when the team started to demonstrate the credibility of X, in some cases it was just on data maintenance or data integrity. Guess who got the work on data maintenance and integrity? I tell you that's a good thing though, because if people around your organization, your partners, your peers, your leaders think that that is a strength for you, embrace that. Because entire careers can be built, hi, that's me, on making sure that your credibility keeps moving forward. Now, it can be tiring at times, but take advantage of those opportunities so that you can bring your team with you. And just like I have had many individuals who worked with me on my teams move up and some beyond where I've been, that is an honor and a privilege for me. So that credibility that we helped establish and grow as they improved their credibility in a different subject from where our team was headed, that helped me feel great as a leader. And so never dismiss or never look back at it and say, but it's more work. Somebody's learning from it. Somebody's growing from it. Somebody's going to use that to enhance and grow their career. Take advantage of those moments and enjoy it. Well, that's about all I have for today. We'll see you next week. And next week, we're going to bring some stories and letters to you from some of our listeners. And we're going to also give you a task to go through and ask yourself other questions and give you some more tasks. Take care and have a great week.